The abduction and murder of Sierah Joughin is a case that will forever scare me, not only because of the way she was found, but because it uncovered a barn of horrors in a small community owned by a local man with a history of abducting women, and the fact that this could have all been prevented had this sick man stayed in prison like he was supposed to. Sierah Joughin was 20 years old when she mysteriously disappeared on July 19th, 2016. She was on summer break from the University of Toledo and was staying with her parents at their home on County Road 6 in Metamora, Ohio. That evening, Sierah was at her boyfriend Josh's house, not super far away, when she decided that she should probably start heading home. So at around 6:45 p.m., Sierah left on her purple bicycle with Josh riding alongside her on his motorcycle. He wanted to make sure that she got home safe, even though it really wasn't that far away. But once they got on to County Road 6, Sierra insisted that she would be okay to ride the rest of the way home alone and told him to go home. So Josh kissed her and told her he loved her and also told her to text him once she got home. But Sierra never made it home, and this was the last time she was ever seen alive. Later that night, when she failed to return home and after Josh realized he couldn't get a hold of her on the phone, Sierra was reported missing to the police. As it was getting dark out, police made a terrifying discovery. Not even a mile away from her home, police found Sierra's bike deep inside of a cornfield just off of County Road 6, not far from where she was last seen by her boyfriend. Surrounding her bike were a ton of items that didn't belong to her, including a pair of men's sunglasses, a screwdriver, and a set of fuse boxes. Investigators described the scene as really eerie, and it made the hair on the back of their necks stand up, because not only did they find these odd items, but they also found signs of a massive struggle. They found motorcycle tracks through the cornfield, as well as broken corn stalks, but they also found corn stalks that were covered in blood. Police immediately closed down the road because this was a clear abduction, and they quickly brought in the FBI for assistance. Together, they tried tracking her location through her Fitbit and her phone, and it did provide them with a ping several miles away from where her bike was found. But this didn't prove to be a good lead because they still couldn't locate Sierra. One thing that they did find nearby, though, is incredibly disturbing, and it was a helmet with a bloody handprint on it. Authorities then started focusing on her boyfriend Josh, not only because he was the last person to be with her before she disappeared, but also because he was riding his motorcycle that day, and police did find motorcycle tracks in the cornfield. But police were able to quickly rule him out based on evidence found at the crime scene, specifically his helmet that he had with him, which obviously wasn't the one used in Sierra's abduction. That and the fact that he was super cooperative and allowed them to search whatever they needed, and Sierra's family even said that Josh would never hurt her. So then a massive search was launched involving local authorities and the FBI, and everyone was pretty focused on the cornfields, but police also started knocking on doors in the neighborhood to see if anyone heard or saw anything. Police specifically wanted to knock on the home of James Worley, who also lived on County Road 6, just like Sierra. In fact, they pretty much lived right down the road from each other. They said they kind of just had this hunch to knock on his door, and when he answered, he immediately began acting suspicious. James started oversharing a bunch of really self-incriminating details, like how he was riding his motorcycle that day in the same area, but it had broken down in the cornfield. Then James started listing off several items that he just so happened to lose in the cornfield, which included some sunglasses, a screwdriver, and, you guessed it, some fuse boxes. This kind of made the detective's jaw drop, because at this point in time, none of that information had been released to the public. So the fact that he just blatantly said that, it seemed pretty clear that he was involved. James also told authorities that when he had broken down out there in the cornfield, he found 2 bikes and decided to take one, which would explain why his fingerprints are probably on them. He then looks them in the eyes and says, quote, "I didn't steal anything or kill anyone." End quote. So because of how sinister that entire encounter was, police decided to run a background check on James, and what they found is horrifying. In July of 1990, James was arrested and convicted for the assault and abduction of another woman named Robin Gardner. The circumstances surrounding that case are eerily similar to Sierra's. That day, Robin was riding her bike when James ambushed her and hit her with his truck. He then got out, struck her over the head, and put her in handcuffs. He then held a screwdriver to her neck, telling her that he would kill her if she screamed. As he was trying to force her into his truck, Robin somehow luckily escaped. He was arrested and charged with her abduction and sentenced to possibly 10 years in prison, but he was released early after just 3 years, and he was actually released because he petitioned himself. He then went to prison again in 2000 for drug and firearm charges, but again, he was released early due to his own petition. After this, he was put in mandated therapy, and in one session, he told his therapist that he had learned from each abduction that he had done, and the next one he was going to bury. So this was definitely enough information to began searching James' property, and on his property, police found a barn that would later become known as the Barn of Horrors. Inside the barn, police found a big green chest with a bunch of women's underwear in it, some of which were bloody. They also found restraints and a carpet-lined freezer that was stained with blood that he had buried on his property. Police then found blood on his motorcycle and zip tie restraints and a ski mask in his truck. Sierah was nowhere to be found, but they did find an overwhelming amount of her DNA on a piece of duct tape and an air mattress in his barn. And adding to the creepiness is the fact that his property was literally plastered with recording devices. After checking his phone records and seeing that it placed him at the crime scene for 2 hours during the time that Sierah was missing, James was officially arrested. He was arrested on abduction charges, but at this point Sierah was still missing, so all hope was that she would be found alive somewhere soon. But sadly, 3 days after she was reported missing, her body would be found buried in a shallow grave in a field just off of County Road 7. This was only a few miles away from James' property. She had been hogtied and had a large plastic toy shoved so far into her mouth as a gag that it broke her teeth. She was also found to be wearing an adult diaper. Sierra's official cause of death was asphyxiation caused by the large plastic toy, but there was no evidence of any SA. James was indicted on 19 counts for charges like aggravated murder and kidnapping, in which he pleaded not guilty. At the trial, it was revealed that he had been watching some pretty bad porn related to what he ended up doing to Sierra up until he committed the crime. It was found that James had passed Sierra on the road that day as she was riding her bike, and then during a crime of opportunity, he hid in the cornfield a little ways up the road and then attacked her as she rode by. He then struck her in the head with his helmet, knocking her unconscious. He then dragged her into the corn and waited until it was dark. Meanwhile, he called his brother to make up a fake story about his motorcycle breaking down, but little did his brother know that Sierra was fighting for her life right next to James while he was on the phone. He then rode his motorcycle home, drove back in a white van where he picked her up, and then took her back to his barn where he eventually killed her. One of the key pieces of evidence in this case, outside of the DNA, was a witness who had seen a white van speeding down that road the night of the abduction. It was reportedly speeding so much that the witness got a license plate number, which was found to be registered to James. His defense argued that all of the sexual things found in James' barn were props and part of a corn studio that he had planned to start. They said that although he did have a fetish disorder, he wasn't responsible for the murder of Sierra. Ultimately, with overwhelming amounts of both Sierra's and James' DNA found at the abduction site as well as in his barn, paired with his phone records putting him at the crime scene, James was found guilty and sentenced to death. His current execution date is set for May 20th of this year. A big reason that he got that ruling is because his former abduction victim, Robin Gardner, spoke at his trial. She said that she knew deep down that she needed to be Sierra's voice because she is no longer here, and she knew that fear all too well. The only good thing that has come out of this is Sierra's law, which was started by her family in Sierra's honor. This law has created a violent offender database that is easily accessible to not just law enforcement, but to the public as well. This allows you to see if there are any violent offenders living in your neighborhood, which is extremely important because had this been around when Sierra was abducted, maybe things would have been different. At the time, even though James was a violent offender and had kidnapped women before, he wasn't in any state or federal offender databases. James was found to fit the profile of a serial offender, and police and even his own family believe that he could possibly have more victims. His family suspects him of killing at least 2 other women, but their remains have yet to be found. So as of today, he's never been officially charged with anything else. But this does make sense because in 2020, the FBI searched his property again. This time they brought in excavation equipment and dug everything up. This wasn't related to Sierra's case, so it makes me wonder what exactly they were looking for and if they ever found anything. Sierra's story is one that I will never be able to forget because it 100% could have been prevented.